My name is Landon Hayes, and my life has always been dull. I'm what you'd call invisible. I'm not popular, I'm not athletic, I'm nothing special. I spend most of my time alone, reading, playing video games, or just wandering around the internet, looking for something to take my mind off my boredom. Not that I'm unhappy exactly, I just wish something interesting would happen, for once. It was on one of those monotonous afternoons that my life changed. Or rather, that I found the object that would change my life forever. I was wandering around the city center, aimlessly, when a peculiar shop window caught my eye. It was an antique store, a dark and dusty place that I had never noticed before. Something about that place attracted me. Perhaps it was the promise of finding something out of the ordinary, something that escaped the sameness of my routine. Whatever the case, I went in. The inside of the store was even more peculiar than the window suggested. There were strange objects everywhere, old furniture, bizarre statues, dusty books, and a multitude of trinkets that I couldn't identify. The air was heavy with the smell of mold and old wood, and the only lighting came from a few dim bulbs that cast dancing shadows on the walls. An old man, who I guessed was the store owner, emerged from behind a dusty counter. He was thin, bent over, with small, piercing eyes that seemed to analyze me from top to bottom. "Can I help you, young man?" he asked, in a hoarse voice that seemed to scratch the silence of the store. "I'm just having a look," I replied, a little awkwardly. "Make yourself at home," he said with an enigmatic smile. "We have lots of interesting things here, things you can't find just anywhere." I began to explore the store, examining the objects with curiosity. There was something fascinating and at the same time disturbing about the place. It was as if each object had a story to tell, a dark and mysterious story. That's when I saw him. In a dark corner of the store, almost hidden by a pile of old carpets, was a mirror. It was no ordinary mirror. It was large, oval, with an ornate frame made of a dark wood that I couldn't identify. The surface of the mirror was thick, antique glass, which reflected the dim light of the store in a strange, almost hypnotic way. Felt immediately drawn to him. It was as if the mirror was calling me, inviting me to come closer. "Interested in the mirror, young man?" asked the old man, coming up beside me. Different," I said, unable to look away. "He's special," said the old man with a twinkle in his eye. "He's come a long way. He's got a lot of history." "How much does it cost?" I asked impulsively. The old man hesitated for a moment, as if he was considering whether or not to sell me the mirror. "For you," he finally said. "I'll give you a special price." He told me an amount that, strangely enough, was exactly what I had in my pocket. It was as if he knew how much I could afford, or maybe it was just a coincidence. Without thinking twice, I paid for the mirror, and, with the old man's help, managed to get it home. That night, I put the mirror in my room, opposite my bed. It was the most interesting piece of furniture I had ever owned, and I couldn't wait to see how it would look in my dull room. While I was admiring him, I noticed something strange. My reflection, he looked different. It wasn't an obvious difference, but I had the feeling that something was wrong. I stood in front of the mirror, moving slowly from side to side, trying to understand what it was. And then I realized the reflection wasn't perfectly synchronized with my movements. There was a delay, minimal, almost imperceptible, but it was there, as if my reflection had a mind of its own. I shook my head, trying to dispel the strange sensation. It was probably just an effect of the lighting, or maybe the old glass in the mirror. I was tired, that was all. I decided to go to sleep, but it didn't come easily. I felt restless, agitated, as if something was about to happen. And then I had a nightmare. I was in a dark, cold, and damp place. I could hear whispers all around me, indistinct voices that seemed to come from every direction. I tried to run, but I couldn't get out of the place. It was as if I was trapped in an invisible spider's web. Suddenly, I woke up. I was in my room lying on my bed, covered in sweat. My heart was racing and my breathing was labored. That's when I heard it. A whisper, low and hoarse, came from the mirror. "Hello, Landon." I got out of bed, startled, and looked in the mirror. There, reflected in the dark surface, I saw a figure, a shadow, darker than the surrounding darkness, writhing and moving inside the mirror. The shadow smiled a wide, sinister smile, revealing sharp, shiny teeth. "Who's there?" I asked, my voice shaking. The shadow didn't answer. It just kept smiling, its red eyes shining in the darkness. I approached the mirror cautiously, trying to understand what was going on. Was I still dreaming? Was the fatigue and tension of the day playing tricks on me? That's when I saw it. Engraved on the underside of the mirror frame, in small cursive letters, was a name. Sebastian. Who was Sebastian? And why was his name engraved on the mirror? I was about to turn away from the mirror when the shadow spoke again. "Landon," she whispered, her voice husky and seductive. "Come closer." I should have run. I should have left the room, the house, and never come back. But I was paralyzed, hypnotized by the figure in the mirror, by the sound of her voice. I moved even closer, until my face was just a few centimeters from the surface of the mirror, and then the shadow held out its hand. A dark hand, with long, thin fingers that seemed to pierce through the surface of the glass. I stepped back, startled, but the hand kept coming closer, as if it was trying to reach me. "Don't be afraid, Landon," whispered the shadow. "I just want to help you." "Help? How?" I asked, feeling a chill run down my spine. "I can give you everything you ever wanted," said the shadow. "Power, confidence, respect. All you have to do is listen to me." I was terrified, but also curious. What was that thing in the mirror, and what did it want from me? "Who are you?" I asked. The shadow smiled again. "I'm Sebastian," she said, "and I'm here to help you become who you really are." I didn't know what that meant, but I was about to find out. That night, as I slept, the shadow in the mirror whispered my name once again. Landon. And this time, I didn't wake up. I didn't have a nightmare. I had a dream. A dream with a power and glory that I had never imagined before. And at the center of that dream was Sebastian, smiling at me, offering me everything I'd ever wanted. All I had to do was say yes. But I still didn't know the price. In the days that followed my first contact with the shadow in the mirror, my life began to change. I felt different, more confident, more alive. It was as if a new energy was pulsating inside me, something I had never experienced before. And every night, Sebastian was there, whispering in the mirror, guiding me, advising me, promising me a future I had never dared to dream of. At first, I was still afraid, but little by little, fear gave way to curiosity, and curiosity to fascination. Sebastian was intelligent, charming, and he seemed to understand my anxieties and frustrations better than anyone I had ever met. He told me his story. He said he was a vampire, imprisoned in the mirror for centuries by an ancient order of hunters. He told me about his powers, about immortality, about the ability to control the minds and bodies of others. "I see your potential, Landon," he said one night, his husky, seductive voice echoing through the dark room. "You're special. You have an inner strength that even you don't know about. But I'm just me," I replied, unsure. "I'm nothing special." Sebastian laughed, a melodious yet sinister sound. "Sinister? You are what you choose to be, Landon," he said, "and I can help you become so much more." He started giving me advice, little suggestions at first. How to dress, how to speak, how to behave in front of others. "Confidence is the key, Landon," he said. "You need to believe in yourself, and the others will too." And to my surprise, it worked. I started to stand up for myself more, to confront people who used to intimidate me. At work, I started giving my opinion, defending my ideas, and people started listening to me. For the first time in my life, I was being noticed. One night, while I was looking in the mirror, Sebastian made me an offer. "I can help you even more, Landon," he said. "I can give you power, real power, but I need your help." "What do you want?" I asked, feeling a mixture of fear and excitement. "I need you to set me free, Landon," he said. "I've been trapped in this mirror for too long. I need to get out." "And how do I do that?" I asked. "There is a ritual," Sebastian replied. "An ancient ritual that can break the curse that binds me here." "And what's in it for me?" I asked, already feeling seduced by the idea of having access to Sebastian's powers. "Immortality, Landon," he replied, with a twinkle in his eye. "Power beyond your imagination. We can rule together. We can have anything we want." The offer was tempting, irresistible even. But there was something in Sebastian's voice, something in the way he looked at me that made me uncomfortable. "I need to think," I said hesitantly. "Don't overthink it, Landon," Sebastian replied. "Time is short. Every day I get weaker, and you lose the chance to become something more." Meanwhile, someone close to me began to notice the changes in my behavior. Emily, a friend from work, approached me, worried. "Are you all right, Landon?" she asked one day while we were having lunch together. "You look different." "I'm fine," I replied defensively. "I've never been better." "Are you sure?" she insisted. "You've been acting strange lately. More aggressive, more distant." I didn't want to tell her about Sebastian. She wouldn't believe me. She'd think I was crazy. "I'm just more confident," I said, trying to downplay the situation. "I'm learning to stand up for myself." Emily didn't seem convinced, but she didn't press the issue. However, over the next few days, I saw her watching me, analyzing me, as if she were trying to decipher a riddle. And then, one day, she confronted me. "I know there's something wrong, Landon," she said seriously. "And I think it has to do with that mirror." My heart froze. How did she know about the mirror? "What are you talking about?" I asked, trying to sound nonchalant. "I did some research," she said. "That mirror you bought, it has a history." She told me that she had found old records in occult books and local folklore that mentioned a cursed mirror, a mirror that imprisoned a vampire called Sebastian Vorel. "He's dangerous, Landon," she said, her eyes full of concern. "You need to get rid of that mirror." I remained silent, not knowing what to say. Part of me wanted to believe her, wanted to get away from the mirror and Sebastian. But the other part, the part that was growing stronger and stronger, craved the power that Sebastian promised. "You don't understand, Emily," I said at last. "Sebastian isn't bad, he just wants to be free." "He's a vampire, Landon," she exclaimed. "He feeds on blood, on lives. You can't trust him." "He promised me he wouldn't hurt anyone," I said, trying to convince myself as much as her. "He's lying, Landon," she said desperately. "He's going to use you, and then discard you. You need to listen to me." I didn't want to hear it. I didn't want to believe that Sebastian was evil. He was my friend, my mentor, the only person who really understood me. That evening, while I was talking to Sebastian, I told him about my conversation with Emily. "She's jealous, Landon," said Sebastian with a cold smile. "She doesn't want you to have the power I can give you. She wants to keep you weak, dependent on her." "But she's my friend," I said hesitantly. "Real friends want your good, Landon," Sebastian replied. "They don't try to keep you away from what can make you stronger." Sebastian's words resonated with me. I had always felt inferior to Emily, always in her shadow. Maybe she really didn't want my good. Maybe she just wanted to keep me around to feel better about herself. That night, I made a decision. I would help Sebastian break free. I would accept the power he offered me, and I wouldn't let anyone, not even Emily, stand in my way. The next day, I met Emily at work. She tried to talk to me again about the mirror, but I ignored her. "I don't want to talk about it anymore, Emily," I said coldly. "I know what I'm doing." "Landon, please," she begged. "Listen to me. You're in danger." "The only danger here is you," I said, feeling a cold anger rise up inside me. "You and your envy. You can't stand the idea of seeing me well, of seeing me happy." Emily looked at me with sadness and disappointment. "I just want to help you, Landon," she said, with tears in her eyes. "I care about you." "Then leave me alone," I said, turning my back on her. That evening, when I returned home, I found Emily waiting outside my apartment. She was holding a sledgehammer in her hands and her eyes were red and swollen from crying. "I'm not going to let you do this, Landon," she said, her voice determined. "I'm going to destroy that mirror." I tried to stop her, but she dodged and ran. Into my apartment, towards my bedroom. I ran after her and found her standing in front of the mirror, sledgehammer raised, ready to strike. "Emily, no!" I shouted, trying to make her stop. But it was too late. She brought the sledgehammer down with all her might, hitting the surface of the mirror. The glass shattered, but, to my surprise, it didn't break. Instead, it recomposed itself, as if it were made of water, returning to its original shape in a matter of seconds. "It's no use, Emily," said a voice behind me. It was Sebastian. He was there, in my room, in the flesh. But he hadn't come out of the mirror. He was still there, reflected in the pristine surface, smiling at me. "The mirror is indestructible," said Sebastian's reflection. "Only the ritual can set me free." Emily looked at me, her eyes full of terror. "Landon, please," she begged. "Don't do this. Don't let him go." I looked at Emily, and then at Sebastian. I was torn. On the one hand, I wanted to believe Emily. I wanted to go back, to get away from that madness. But on the other hand, I could feel Sebastian's power calling me, promising me a life I had never imagined. "I'm sorry, Emily," I said at last, "but I need to do this." I turned to Sebastian, ready to accept my fate. "What do I need to do?" I asked. Sebastian's reflection smiled. "It's simple, Landon," he said. "All it takes is a little blood." After the confrontation with Emily, I completely distanced myself from her. I didn't answer her calls, I didn't reply to her messages, I avoided meeting her at work. She tried to talk to me several times, but I ignored her, following Sebastian's advice. "She's a distraction, Landon," he said. "She wants to keep you weak, dependent. You don't need her." And I believed him. I wanted to believe him. Because with Sebastian by my side, I felt stronger, more confident, more powerful than ever. I began to delve deeper into the liberation ritual. Sebastian guided me, step by step, revealing the ancient secrets he had kept for centuries. I discovered that the mirror was not only a prison but also a portal to a world beyond ours, a world of shadows and power, where Sebastian reigned before he was imprisoned. The ritual was complex and required a series of specific ingredients, objects imbued with mystical energy, which I needed to collect. Sebastian instructed me on where to find them, how to prepare them, and how to use them. But there was something that bothered me. The ritual also required blood. Not just a few drops, but a significant amount. And, according to Sebastian, it had to be my blood. "The blood bond is essential, Landon," he explained. "It's what will connect our energies, break down the barrier between the worlds, and allow me to return." I hesitated, of course. The idea of cutting myself, of spilling my own blood, was disturbing. But Sebastian reassured me that it was a small sacrifice compared to the power I would receive in return. "The pain will be temporary, Landon," he said, "but the reward will be eternal." And I, foolish and ambitious, believed him. I started preparing for the ritual. I spent days collecting the ingredients, following Sebastian's instructions to the letter. Meanwhile, Emily wouldn't give up on me. She kept trying to warn me, to make me see the truth about Sebastian. "He's using you, Landon," she said one day, when she cornered me in the hallway at work. "He's a monster. You need to get away from him." "You don't understand anything, Emily," I replied coolly. "Sebastian is my friend. He's going to give me everything I've ever wanted." "Friends don't ask you to cut yourself and spill your blood for them," she exclaimed, exasperated. "It's a small sacrifice," I replied impatiently. "You wouldn't understand." "I understand that you're hurting yourself, Landon," she said with tears in her eyes. "And I'm not going to stand by and watch you destroy yourself." I turned away from her, feeling an inexplicable anger rise up inside me. Who did she think she was to tell me what to do? She had always been the right one, the good one, the one who had everything under control. But I didn't need her anymore. I had Sebastian now, and that's when things started to get out of hand. I started having blackouts, moments when I lost track of time, place and myself. I'd wake up in strange places, not knowing how I'd got there, with dirty clothes and bruises I didn't remember making. One night, I woke up in my room, covered in blood. My blood. There were deep cuts on my arms, and the pain was excruciating. I didn't remember doing it, but I knew deep down that Sebastian had something to do with it. When I confronted him, he denied any involvement. "You're getting stronger, Landon," he said, with a reassuring smile. "Your body is adapting to the new energy. It's normal to have these lapses." But I didn't believe him. I was afraid. Afraid of what I was becoming. Afraid of what Sebastian was doing to me. The other day at work, a colleague made a bad joke with me. Something I would normally ignore, but which that day made me furious. Before I could control myself, I attacked him. I punched him in the face with all my strength, feeling his bones break under my fingers. I would have killed him if other colleagues hadn't held me back. I was fired, of course, and when the anger passed, I was overcome with horror and regret. What had I become? Later that night, when I was finally alone, I looked at my reflection in the mirror. My eyes were red, bloodshot, and my face was contorted in an expression of hatred that I barely recognized. "What's happening to me, Sebastian?" I asked, my voice breaking. Sebastian's reflection smiled. "You're becoming who you were born to be." "Landon," he said, "strong, powerful, fearless." "I don't want to be like that," I said, feeling tears streaming down my face. "I don't want to hurt people." "Sometimes violence is necessary, Landon," Sebastian replied. "To protect yourself, to get what you want, to show the world your true power." I knew he was manipulating me, molding me to his will. But I couldn't resist. With each passing day, I felt my humanity slipping away, being replaced by something dark and monstrous. Emily tried to talk to me again, but I rejected her, more angrily and violently than before. "I warned you, Landon," she said sadly. "But you wouldn't listen. Now it's too late." "You don't know anything, Emily," I replied with contempt. "You never knew." "I know you're not yourself anymore," she said. "That monster in the mirror has turned you into something else, into something evil." "He's turned me into something better," I shouted, feeling an uncontrollable rage growing inside me. "Something you'll never understand." I pushed her hard and she fell to the floor, hitting her head on the edge of the table. She moaned in pain, and a trickle of blood ran down her forehead. For a moment, the anger passed, and I saw what I had done. I had hurt the only person who really cared about me. "Emily," I muttered, horrified. But before I could get any closer, Sebastian's voice echoed through the room. "Don't worry about her, Landon," he said. "She doesn't matter anymore. You have more important things to do." And at that moment, I knew that I had lost control. I was no longer the master of my body, of my actions. I was just a puppet in Sebastian's hands, and the ritual of liberation was getting closer and closer. Even with the control Sebastian exerted over me, part of me still struggled. The sight of Emily lying on the floor, the blood dripping from her forehead, the horror in her eyes, it haunted me. I needed to get away from Sebastian. I needed to break the tie that bound us. But how? I was weak, physically and mentally. The blackouts continued, and I feared what might happen during these lapses of consciousness. Sebastian was getting stronger and stronger, and I felt there would soon be no turning back. Meanwhile, Emily, even after what I did to her, didn't give up on me. She kept investigating the mirror, looking for a way to save me. And one day she came to me with a determined expression on her face. "I've discovered something, Landon," she said bluntly. "Something about the mirror, about Sebastian." I watched her in silence, torn between hope and fear. "That mirror," she continued, "was created centuries ago by a secret order. An order dedicated to hunting down and imprisoning creatures of darkness, like vampires." She showed me an old book with yellowed pages and Gothic lettering. It was a grimoire, a manual of magic, full of symbols and rituals. "They created the mirror to imprison Sebastian," she said, pointing to a passage in the book. "He was too powerful to be killed, so they sealed him inside, using a blood ritual." "I know about the ritual," I said quietly. Sebastian told me. But he didn't tell you everything, Landon, said Emily, with urgency in her voice. He left out the most important part. The ritual not only frees him, it also transfers the life essence of the person performing it to the mirror, imprisoning the person's soul in the vampire's place. What? I exclaimed, feeling a chill run down my spine. That's not true. He promised me power, immortality. He lied, Landon, said Emily. He just wants your life, your soul. He wants to break free no matter the cost. Emily's words hit me like a punch in the gut. Everything Sebastian had promised me, everything I had believed, was a lie. I had been a fool, an idiot, blinded by ambition and the desire for power. What do I do, Emily? I asked, desperate. How do I stop it? There is a way to destroy the mirror, she said, leafing through the grimoire. A counter-ritual, but it's dangerous. And we need the right ingredients. I was willing to try anything. I needed to get rid of Sebastian before it was too late. We worked together, gathering the necessary components for the counter-ritual. Emily guided me, using her knowledge of the occult and her unwavering determination to help me. Meanwhile, Sebastian became increasingly furious at my refusal to continue with the liberation ritual. He threatened me, tormented me, tried to force me to give in. "You can't betray me, Landon," he shouted, his voice distorted by anger. "We're linked now. You belong to me." But I resisted. With each passing day, I felt Sebastian's influence waning, while my own willpower grew stronger. "You're weak, Landon," hissed Sebastian in one of his last attempts to control me. "You'll never be anything without me." "You're wrong," I replied firmly. "I'm stronger than you think." Finally, the day of the counter-ritual arrived. We were ready. We had gathered all the ingredients, memorized the words, prepared the venue. But, before we could begin, Sebastian revealed his true face. "Do you think you can stop me?" he said, his voice echoing around the room. "You're fools." The reflection in the mirror began to distort, to expand. The frame creaked, and the glass began to crack. Sebastian was trying to get out, even without the full ritual. "He's using the energy he stole from you, Landon," shouted Emily. "He's strong enough to partially free himself." Suddenly, a dark, sharp claw emerged from the mirror, tearing through the glass, then another and another. Sebastian was emerging slowly, writhing, freeing himself from his prison. "I warned you," he said with a cruel smile. "You can't stop me." Emily and I exchanged a look. It was now or never. We began the counter-ritual, reciting the ancient words, mixing the ingredients, following the instructions in the grimoire. The room was filled with a strange energy, an oppressive force that seemed to press against our bodies. The air became cold, and a smell of sulfur permeated the room. Sebastian roared, feeling the power of the counter-ritual. His claws extended even further, trying to reach us, but an invisible barrier seemed to protect us. "No," he shouted. "You can't do this to me. I'm immortal. I'm invincible." "You're a freak," shouted Emily back, "and we're going to send you back to hell where you came from." We continued the ritual, our hands trembling and our voices choking. With each word recited, each gesture made, the barrier around us grew stronger, and Sebastian's form began to fall apart. "Landon, help me," Sebastian begged, his voice now weak and desperate. "Don't do this to me. I'm begging you." For a moment, I hesitated. Even after everything, part of me still felt sorry for him. He had manipulated me, used me, but in a way, he had also given me a purpose, a reason to live. But then I remembered Emily, of her courage, her loyalty, her sacrifice. She had risked everything to save me, even when I didn't deserve it, and I knew I had to do the right thing. With tears in my eyes, I joined Emily in the final recitation of the counter-ritual. Our voices joined together, forming a single, powerful, and determined voice. "By the power vested in us," we said in unison, "we banish you back to darkness." A burst of light flooded the room. An agonizing scream echoed through the room, and then silence. The mirror was intact, but Sebastian's reflection had disappeared. "He's gone." Sebastian's temporary defeat gave us a brief moment of relief, but we knew it wouldn't be the end. He was still there, trapped in the mirror, but recovering, gathering strength for a new onslaught. We needed to act quickly before he found a way to break free completely. "What do we do now, Emily?" I asked, feeling the weight of responsibility on my shoulders. "We need to finish the ritual," she replied firmly. "The ritual of Sebastian's release. But this time you'll do it the right way. No tricks, no lies." She explained to me that the original ritual, the one Sebastian had taught me, was a farce. He never intended to give me power or immortality. His aim was simply to use my blood and life energy to break the barrier that bound him and then take possession of my body, discarding my soul. The real ritual, described in the grimoire, was different. It didn't free Sebastian, but destroyed him, purifying the mirror and eliminating his evil influence forever. But there was a price. The ritual required a sacrifice, a blood sacrifice, just as Sebastian had said. But this time, it wouldn't just be a few drops. To destroy the vampire once and for all, I would need to give a significant part of my own life. "There's a chance you won't survive, Landon," said Emily, her eyes full of concern. "The ritual drains a lot of energy. It may be too much for your body to bear." I stared at the mirror, the reflection now empty and harmless. For a moment, I considered the possibility of just leaving it as it was. Sebastian was trapped, weakened. Maybe that was enough. But then I remembered all the people he had hurt, all the lives he had destroyed, how he had manipulated me, turned me into a monster. No, it wasn't enough. I needed to put an end to it, once and for all. For everyone's sake, and for my own. "I'll do it," I said firmly. "I'll finish the ritual." Emily looked at me with a mixture of admiration and sadness. "I'll be here with you, Landon," she said, "until the end." We prepared everything for the ritual. We followed the instructions in the grimoire to the letter. No shortcuts, no lies. I drew the circle of protection around the mirror, positioned the candles, recited the ancient words. Emily stayed by my side, holding my hand, giving me strength. When everything was ready, I looked in the mirror one last time. "Sebastian," I called, "it's time to end this." The reflection remained empty for a moment. Then, slowly, a shape began to materialize. It wasn't the distorted shadow from before, but the figure of a man. A handsome, charming man with piercing eyes and a seductive smile. Sebastian's true form. "Are you sure about this, Landon?" he asked, his voice soft and persuasive. "There's still time to change your mind. We can rule together. We can have everything we want." "You used me, Sebastian," I said, feeling the anger rising inside me. "You manipulated me. You turned me into something I'm not." "I gave you power, Landon," Sebastian replied. "I freed you from your weaknesses. You've turned me into a monster," I said firmly, "and now I'm going to destroy you." Sebastian sighed as if bored with the conversation. "So be it then," he said. "But know that you're making a mistake from which you will never recover." I ignored his words and concentrated on the ritual. I needed to do this. For me, for Emily, for everyone who had suffered at Sebastian's hands. I took the silver dagger, one of the essential ingredients of the ritual, and positioned myself in front of the mirror. "Are you sure about this, Landon?" asked Emily, her voice breaking. "It doesn't have to be like this." "You have to," I replied. "It's the only way." I took a deep breath, preparing myself for what was to come. "Say the words, Landon," said Sebastian with a cruel smile, "and let's get it over with." I nodded and began to recite the words of the ritual, the ancient words that would banish Sebastian back into darkness. With every word, I felt my energy being drained, my body growing weaker. But I carried on, mustering all my willpower, all my determination. When I reached the end of the ritual, the moment of sacrifice, I hesitated. The silver dagger trembled in my hand and fear invaded me. "Do it, Landon!" shouted Emily. "Don't give up now!" "You don't have to do this, Landon," Sebastian whispered, his voice now weak and distant. "There's still time to change your mind. Join me. Be immortal." I looked at Emily, at her expression of determination and courage, and then I looked at Sebastian, at his cruel and seductive smile, and I knew what I had to do. With a scream, I plunged the silver dagger into my own chest. The pain was excruciating. I felt as if my body was on fire, as if my soul was being ripped out of me, but I didn't stop. I continued to recite the words of the ritual, even as the blood gushed from the wound, even as the life drained out of me. And then the light, a blinding white light emanated from the mirror, filling the room, consuming everything. I heard an agonizing scream, a scream of pain and fury, and I knew it was Sebastian. And then everything went dark. When I regained consciousness, I was lying on the floor of my room, with Emily beside me, holding my hand. Sunlight was streaming in through the window and the air was strangely calm, as if a storm had just passed through. "Landon, are you all right?" asked Emily, her eyes full of tears. I think so," I replied, my voice weak. I sat up with difficulty and looked around. The room was a mess, the furniture overturned, shards of glass scattered all over the floor. But the mirror was different. The ornate frame, once so imposing, was now cracked and broken. And the surface of the mirror, once a portal to another world, was now just ordinary glass, reflecting the morning sunlight. "What happened?" I asked, confused. "You did it, Landon," said Emily with a tired smile. "You destroyed the mirror. You destroyed Sebastian." The memories came back, fragmented and painful. The ritual, the pain, the light, Sebastian's scream. Had I really succeeded? Had I really freed myself from his evil influence? I stood up on shaky legs and approached the mirror. I looked at my reflection, hoping to see Sebastian's shadow, hoping to feel his presence. But there was nothing. Just my own reflection, tired and haggard, but free. I had won. In the days that followed, I slowly recovered. The wound in my chest healed, but the experience left deep scars on my soul. I would never be the same again. Emily stayed by my side, supporting me, helping me to overcome the trauma. She had been my savior, my anchor in the midst of the storm. Without her, I would surely have been lost. The police investigated the incident. In my apartment, but with no concrete evidence and my refusal to tell the truth, the case was dropped. No one would believe the story of a vampire trapped in a mirror, of a liberation ritual, of a battle against the forces of darkness. And in a way, I preferred it that way. The world wasn't ready to know the truth about Sebastian and the mirror. Over time, life returned to normal, or at least as normal as possible. I got a new job in a completely different field, away from computers and the internet. Emily and I grew even closer, and our friendship turned into something deeper. But I never forgot Sebastian. I never forgot the power he had given me, the darkness he had awakened in me. And sometimes I found myself looking in mirrors, afraid of seeing his shadow forming again, afraid of hearing his voice whispering in my ears. One day, while cleaning up the wreckage of my old apartment, I found a small fragment of the cursed mirror. A sharp, jagged piece of glass that had come loose from the frame during the final battle. I should have gotten rid of it, thrown it away, destroyed it. But something stopped me. It was as if a part of me, a dark and secret part, was still connected to that mirror, to that vampire, to that power. I kept the fragment, hiding it in a box at the back of my cupboard. A constant reminder of what I had faced, what I had overcome, and what I needed to keep under control. Years passed. I married Emily. We built a family, a happy life. But even so, Sebastian's shadow remained with me, a ghost from the past that refused to disappear completely. And then, one night, I saw him. I was brushing my teeth before bed, looking at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, when, for a split second, I saw something move in the back of my eyes. A shadow, a smile, a red, hungry glow. I blinked, and the image disappeared, but I knew what I had seen. Sebastian. It was still there, somewhere. Perhaps hidden in that little fragment of mirror. Perhaps in the depths of my own soul, waiting for a chance to return. I knew it would never leave me alone. That as long as I lived, the hunger of the mirror would always be there, a constant threat, a reminder of the power of darkness and the fragility of my own humanity. And I knew I had to be prepared, That, at any moment, the battle could begin again. Because in the end, the fight against the shadows never really ends. It just changes, adapts, hides in the depths of our being, waiting for the right moment to resurface, and I would be ready. I had to be, because now I wasn't just Landon Hayes, the lonely, dull young man. I was the bearer of the secret of the mirror, the guardian of the flame, the protector against darkness. And I wouldn't fail. Not this time.